Is that what we got?
All right. It's 6 p.m. here on Tuesday, April the 12th, and we'll call this meeting of the Murphysboro City Council to order. I'd ask if we would all rise. We have with us this evening Pastor Wes Henson. Location, please.
Sure. Let's pray together. Lord God, we recognize you as the God of justice. You're the God of mercy, the God of peace. And so we invite you to preside over this meeting this evening. I ask, Lord, that you bless the mayor, the council, bless this community as they address the needs that surround us. And Lord, even as different opinions are expressed, give us unity of spirit today. Help us to listen politely as others share their points of view. And may we have a spirit of camaraderie in this room as we joyfully share our mission, which is to honor you and to build a better community for all. We pray in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Wes. Clerk Hunsaker, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Hughes. Alderman Hughes. Alderman Curry, here. Alderman Campos.
Here.
Alderman Austin.
Here.
Alderman Brown. Alderman Pittman.
Here.
Alderman Urbis.
Here.
Alderman McComb.
Here.
Alderman Bastian. Alderman Gladden.
Here.
Mayor Stevens.
Here. All right, thank you everyone for being with us this evening. Appreciate that. We have, of course, up first this evening the consideration of council minutes. These from March the 22nd, and we entertain any questions or amendments to the minutes at this time. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Up next, we have the consideration of accounts payable, receivable, and payroll registers, list 405, and entertain any questions on the bills. Mr. McComb?
So I just got one here. How much more engineering fees are going to be on the 7th Street project? Do you know offhand?
I don't remember what was set up there, but I mean, you know, it's really just starting. Those are all prospective construction engineering.
We don't have any engineering fee on future lane, do we?
There will be some. I'll work with you on that.
Okay,
We haven't built that out yet.
that's on the question.
Mr. Urbis, I saw you had a hand.
Yeah, page 14, the Sally Little Library, 7,600 something. I guess, is that just kind of a pass-through?
It is, it's replacement tax that we get, and then it's based off of our tax levy that we have to send out to all the people that are on our tax letters, such as police pension, fire pension, library.
Thank you. Mr. Pittman?
On page 2, we talked about this earlier, the Arthur Agency marketing support and design retainer. Is that something that we've done before, or is that?
It's a tourism expense, and I talked to Mike Jones today, and he will have a report from tourism at our next meeting, and promises to be delivering those quarterly from here on out.
Okay.
Any other questions on the bills? Hearing none, entertain a motion to pay the bills.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to our committee and commission reports. Jay Pittman.
I'm sorry, on the bills, I have a question for Scott on the receipts.
Okay.
I see we cashed in several CDs.
They matured, so I typically will cash those in rather than just letting them roll to a new term, because we generally get a pretty low rate when we do that. So, and then we, you know, it's cashed in, added to the cash, and then periodically Sandra and I will she will get rates, and we will evaluate.
So it hasn't been reinvested yet?
Right.
I was just wondering about the new rates that we got, but. that's
Well,
still
they're
coming.
definitely they're not laughable like they were, say, 6 months or a year ago. They're getting more respectable. I know out there in the market, there are now 2-year CDs that exceed 2%, which is very good compared to where we were a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll be doing that soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. That takes us to our committee and commission reports. First, Budget and Finance, chaired by W.J. Pippin.
Thank you, Will. We have no items under old business. Under new business, we have financial statements prepared by Scott Evans.
Thank you, WJ. So, as you see, the first page is the sales tax report. So for our voucher sales and home rule tax this month, we've got 284, 385, so that's just a hair less than last year, but still quite above the normal April voucher average, so not a bad. And if you'll recall, at the last meeting, we had some discussion about the Walmart issue. I'm still working on an answer to that, to see roughly how much their sales and sales tax is in a month's time. It's not as easy to get as you would think, so I am working on that, and hopefully have an answer possibly next meeting. And again, if there was any interruption in the sales because of the fire, we would see it in the June allotment. So, and I don't foresee it to be much, since it wasn't very long since they did a fantastic job of getting back to normal out there, but there could be some blip there. So we'll see, but I hope to have that broader answer by the next meeting. On the next page, we have our schedule of operating expenses by department versus budget. And so through the 3 months ending March 31st, in general fund only, now this is just general fund, we have spent $1,344,000, and for the same period we have budgeted $1,658,000, so we're currently $313,000 under budget in spending. And as you can see there are a couple of anomalies still in the over and under. Obviously, the information tech is still showing over budget because of the timing of that. We got the money last year, and we got the construction costs are coming in this year, so there was some mismatching of the timing there, so that still kind of looks kind of funny because of that. And the street department, we're slightly over because oh yeah, 16th Street projects, storm sewer, and the sidewalk and that kind of stuff were not budgeted for essentially. And so that temporarily is showing a over budget in that line, in that department. Which some of that will catch up as the year goes along, but also too, the future lane would be coming out of that line too, and so that's more than the budget for, so that will probably be over budget at the end of the year in that department because of that. But the good news is revenues are still flowing in ahead of our expectations at this point. We brought in $1,761,000. We budgeted 1.6 change, and so we're about $100,000 over budget in revenues through 1 quarter of the year. So that's a plus thing. So as a result, we're running a surplus so far. So also good news if we're planning on some things that maybe weren't budgeted, like future land, gives us a little padding for things of that nature coming up. So, all right. And the last page, the last 3 pages, of course, is the salaries. And again, this is not just general fund, but this is also water sewer too. So I'll skip to the punchline. So through the month, we budgeted $307,000, and we spent $264 basically. So we're about 43 under budgeted salaries so far. And year to date, we're about $115,000 under budget. For a couple different reasons. Obviously, some things weren't budgeted to happen until later in the year, that type of thing. So again, like I've said many times, you certainly like to be a little bit ahead of where you want to be going into the year. You don't want to be behind budget early and have to play catch up. So, and we're doing fine on our salary so far. So, any questions?
Very good report. Appreciate that, Scott. Thank you. That's the only, or we have, not the only item under business. We have consideration of rehabilitation loan forgiveness. Can I get back to you, Scott?
I can take that, and I can defer some to Sandra if need be too. So for many years, we've had this rehab loan program, and you probably heard Sandra and myself, our frustration with the program many times about past sins of not having proper things filed and that type of thing 20, 30 years ago. But every once in a while, we come across a pleasant surprise. So this is a case of where a lien was filed on a particular rehab loan on this property, and this particular individual is in the process of refinancing the loan, that type of thing. And so it's for Phyllis Jackson. She owed us $15,235, which was the original amount of the loan. I don't think a payment was ever made on that, to my knowledge. And when was the payment received? The $5,000. It wasn't in 2021. It was like the last. Yeah. So we received a check for $5,235.90, and they're requesting the city consider writing that $10,000 off, releasing the lien, letting them get on with their property transactions, that type of thing. And we do have a precedent of doing that in past cases. The way I kind of look at it is, there have been so many of these that we may never get anything on. If we get, a nice chunk like this, that's a bonus. And so that's what we're wanting to kind of clean. And I can tell you too that this loan was long since written off on the financial record, so it's not even part of our financial statement anymore. The loans that I do give you that are still active are about 6 or 8. This has never been one of those active ones. I think that was written on so many years ago for financial reporting reasons that you kind of forget it's there almost. But fortunately, they did file a lien on that one so that there was a record of us to be able to get the amount that we did get.
Well, they just paid it down at 10,000 even is what they did.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we did about 5 months ago with the urban rehab loan. It was paid down to 10,000, and then that's what the council agreed to write off. And so the precedent is there for that. So, now could we maybe collect this? I don't know, perhaps. I mean, the statute of limitations probably long since went out. Richard could probably speak to that for sure, but since they made the payment, I guess that could open up the statute again to collect it. So, but I have no idea, about her ability to pay that amount. I just don't know.
Are you suggesting, Scott, that we forgive the 10?
Well, I think in all fairness to lots of other people that haven't paid anything and other people we have done the write down for, it seems like an equitable thing to do for this person.
I have to give them credit. If I'd been in their shoes, I would have held the check and called the city and said, if you'll forgive me the 10,000, I'll send you this check. They went ahead and sent the check.
Yeah,
They said, will you forgive me the 10,000?
They did send that in good faith.
They
That's correct.
gave away their leverage.
Yeah.
I would make a motion that we forgive the 10,000 remaining on that loan.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Scott, how much did you say that check was for?
$5,235.90.
$35.
All right, next item is consideration for Murphysboro Main Street for a loan guarantee. So Jamie Green just walked in. Jamie, is that you? Are you-
Yes.
Or both of
and
you?
no. We're here together. as a
Okay.
partner. Thank you in advance. I'm Paula Maloney, Jamie Green for Main Street. I am the sub-chairman of the Old Depot Restoration Committee. I brought a small version of the rendering. Many of you, most of you, all of you know that we are in the process of restoring the Old Depot, which was gifted to us over a year ago. We've started phase one, which includes a new roof. It didn't just need a new roof or new shingles, it needed a whole new roof. We have started that, work is underway. We have also raised over $200,000 for the project. At this time, we would like to make plans for phase two, which includes the rest of the restoration, the body of the building. And in doing that, instead of painstakingly spending a number of years trying to raise the rest of the funds, we are seeking assistance from a financial institution in town. And as part of their recommendation to us to get our paperwork together, they asked if we would possibly consider requesting that the city become an underwriter for the loan for the remainder of the project. Hopefully, the city would not be responsible for even $1, but it would be an umbrella. We actually have no equity in the building. The building was considered, more of a liability than an asset at the time that we received it. Although we see lots of assets in there. But that's kind of where we stand. So we are here to beg and plead for the consideration.
Well, we appreciate you coming and speaking to us and providing us with this letter. Obviously, the progress has been great to watch, and I support us doing this. I wouldn't necessarily support it unless it was coming from people who have shown such a deep commitment to the city and a willingness to invest their own time and energy and talent. And, I have tremendous confidence in Murphysboro Main Street. And so I understand the need, and I support the idea.
I would make that motion. Well,
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And I also would like to deflect some of your appreciation to the community, because people have come forward and really given monetarily and of their hearts and talents and physical labor. So it's Murphysboro, not Murphysboro Main Street.
What is the update on the timeline, if you have one? I mean, obviously, we can kind of see it progress, but,
Originally for the roof, which if it becomes enclosed, we could buy a little bit more time. We want to get it out of the weather
Yeah.
and prevent any further damage. But I think originally they said about 3 weeks for that phase. We did have a week or more of bad weather, so I'm hoping a month.
okay.
And then we do have a timeline for the rest, but we don't have the money, so we.
I just, the roof was all I was
Okay.
wondering about. It's looking great, so
All right,
thank you.
I cornered the guys working on it, eating lunch at Dairy Queen, and
Yeah.
they said that it was very interesting. The nails are actually handmade.
Oh, wow.
That were in there, so they've kept some of those. They've saved all of the wood that came off the back that they can. And they would, obviously you can't go in the area right now because it's blocked off, but any significance that would carry that anybody would want, they're trying to keep what they can. And they said they definitely don't make it like they used to.
Yeah, definitely.
But the roof was literally just sitting on the top.
Yeah.
So the right gust of wind
It's amazing that thing
would not have been
stayed
good.
there.
So-
Grace of God.
But to see them up there makes you pretty nervous, but they're pretty proud to work on it, I will say.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That's the last item under new business. Is there any public comment under budget and finance? Hearing none, we can move out of budget.
Thank you, WJ. That takes us to a building and grounds chaired by John Irvis. John?
Have no old business. have one item of new business, consideration of electrical work at 18H and Walnut Street, the Youth and Rec Center. I have a bid for Burke Electric and materials.
I have an update on this, John.
Okay.
I spoke with Joe Fry before the meeting today, and he said that Klutz Electric and Voss Heating went and inspected the situation, and apparently with some tweaking, they were able to get this functional, and they believe that we don't need to do anything for now. They're not promising that we may not have to do something 6 months from now, but that it was operational. And so he said we could defer this until later.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you. Good news,
I'll try to bring similar reports in the future.
more good news.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Any public comment on building grounds? Move on.
Thank you, Mr. Urbis. That takes us to Community Relations chaired by Mr. Mike Austin. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. Under old business, we have nothing, and under new business, we have two items. The first being the consideration of street closure request form that we talked about briefly at our last meeting. And I want to preface this whole conversation as this is nothing to defer people from doing what they're currently doing. We encourage them to continue. We just ask for more accountability and just let them keep doing what they're doing, but just ask them to follow through a little bit more to us. And Sandra was kind enough to start us with a street closure request form, and it was in everybody's packet. So I would ask that we use that as a starting point for a conversation to see if in fact this is the request we want to use, or if in fact we have some changes that we would like to see. I have talked to a few people, and one thing that was brought to my attention is many of you might not know that every time that we have a street closure request, I always pester Chief McBride and Chief Ellemeyer and Darren Mills about their approval. So one thing that was asked is if we could just have a place on the request form for their signatures before it comes to the city council. And then that way we will know that they've already approved it. And but I would ask conversation from the council. Yes, Mr. Urbis.
Well, so a lot of groups like Cruise Nights and the Bruce Brothers, they'll come with a request for, 5 or 6 months. Is that each one of those a new request, or is how are we going to consider that?
Well, we actually talked about that briefly. We talked about having if we choose to put a deposit on the request, just to allow that to carry until the next one, if in fact they go through the first one with no hiccups. Yeah, Don?
So we can approve the bulk of them basically with the understanding that they've got to satisfy the requirement each time, basically.
That's correct.
So are we talking about this for individuals and nonprofits and everybody? Is this a blanket form and $100 deposit that everybody puts down no matter who they are?
I would hope that we wouldn't discriminate. I would hope that we could have this as a blanket. And I understand Ms. Campos at the last meeting mentioned non-for-profits. But I want to reiterate that we're not looking to discourage people from using the streets or the city property, and we're not looking to make money. So the thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that they get their money back, but all we're asking is just for them to provide us with the information and then follow through with the information that they provide us.
Mr. Gladden?
Yes, Mr. Gladden?
Mayor?
1 second, Gloria, we'll be right with you.
Go ahead and take
Okay.
it, Gloria.
All right, Mr. Gladden has deferred to you, Ms. Campos. Go ahead.
Thank you. Maybe to add in the form, if they are non-for-profit, add the 501c3 or 501c4 status to write a waiver for the fee.
So just so make sure everybody heard what Gloria said, she's suggesting a fee waiver for nonprofits that would apply for a street closure. Of course, Mr. Gladden.
I think that, what we have is really great, and I appreciate
Yes.
that. There's two things I would like to see, though. Under organization name, that they also identify the event, because just getting an organization's name doesn't tell us what the event is going to be.
It's on here. Mhm.
Name of event,
Name of it.
it's 3 lines
Oh,
down.
yeah, sorry. I would like to see us in where we're saying there's going to be a forfeiture if they don't clean up. They'll forego, they won't get their deposit back, but we need to add any additional costs, because it might end up costing the labor to get that cleaned up more than $100.
All right.
Well,
Mr. McCall?
even on a nonprofit, if they're putting up a check for $100 and they clean everything up, we're not discriminating against them. We're not taking any money from anybody. If they do the cleanup and take care of the event, they get their money back. So it don't matter if I'm nonprofit or what. All they're doing is putting up a deposit. Let's say they'll go by our guidelines. If they go by the guidelines, you're not charging them anything anyway.
Yes, I agree with that, Gary. And we oftentimes have situations where you have a for-profit business and Bruce Brothers partners with a nonprofit organization, like one of the local, humane shelters or something. And so there's sort of a mixed situation here where is this a for-profit or nonprofit? It's both. So I appreciate what Gloria is saying, because oftentimes we have tailored rules that are different for nonprofits, but as long as everybody does what they say they're going to do, everybody's going to get their money back anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's necessary in this case.
And I talked with Attorney Blake today about any additional liability that the city would have by having a form, and he assured me that we were just as good as we was without the form, correct?
Right, what I said is by having the form and this extra step in the procedure doesn't change the position the city would be in. And the city, now, if they were with or without the form, if somebody's to get hurt and pull the city into a lawsuit over it, the city's looking to their insurance for coverage there. Having this form or not having this form would not change that position.
All right.
All right. So we've talked about a few things. I don't know what the council's thoughts are. Is the $100, is that adequate for? And then Alderman Gladden mentioned additional cost. Do we need to add that onto the end of it after the rental damage deposit?
Well, if you have 3 guys up there cleaning up, you're gonna eat up more than $100 if they're there an hour, It's just according to what you want to do with it. If it's a nonprofit or Main Street or whoever is in this, the high school, whatever, if we have to clean up, it's gonna run you more than $100.
Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Campos?
maybe suggesting the $100 deposit plus additional fees in case of the cleanup is needed.
Yeah, I think that would be good language to add. I don't know exactly what the language should state, but no question, it's better to have that language probably than not to have it, in case somebody really does cause a major problem. Mr. Irvis?
Richard, can we enforce that without like a court action or something? I mean, is that something we can just?
Well, if you try to pursue anything above keeping the $100 deposit and they refuse to pay it, you would end up suing them in small court.
That's what I was thinking. So you're not really.
Well, do you need,
I mean, you could say something that potentially liable for additional damages, but yeah, I don't think you can just.
We could do that now without the $100 deposit, correct? Somebody did damage to the street and we thought they were liable for it, we could take them to small claims court and say.
Sure, if you have the language in here that they're agreeing that they're going to do any, take care of all the costs of cleanup that would be necessary, you could, and they didn't, you would be able to sue them for those costs.
I mean,
Well, do we have Richard add something to
I'm open to that. I have no problem with adding that additional language. I mean, we typically don't have an issue, and so I don't think that this is going to be something we have to run up against very often, but we have had recently an issue, and so we want to try to formalize the process. So yes, I would ask Richard to copy that language. I'm sorry, WJ, did you have something else?
I mean, my thoughts on it, like you said, we haven't seen, I don't mind the form, I don't mind a deposit. I mean, I just don't think we've had an issue with it. I think something that Gary's brought up several times in the past is I would be more inclined for us to require the person to come to the council meeting, you know, and represent their request like we've asked several times, you know, instead, that's their accountability right there, being face to face with us when they ask for it. We can put a face to the name of whoever's on there. We know what the event is, they can explain it in detail. I mean, doesn't seem necessary to me.
WJ, I'll tell you that every time we've had a street closure, I have called the people and asked them to be here. Some have chose to come, some have chose not to.
I think we've asked,
Yeah.
you know, we've asked several times, you know,
Yeah.
and some, I mean, and there's just some people you can't get them, you know. But if it's something we required or we just didn't vote on it unless they were here, unless it was a special circumstance that we knew that they couldn't make it here, you know, but if it's.
Well, and in fairness, a lot of times these events have been approved in the past without incident.
Right.
And so we become used to, you know, approving things because people prove themselves with a track record. And, but, you know, I think this is a, you know, very basic thing that shouldn't cause any of our organizations much problem. And
I mean, are we gonna require Apple Festival to put down $100 deposit and fill out this form? And then, you know, we spend, you know, lots of labor cleaning up after the parade and doing that kind of thing. Are we gonna keep their $100? You know, and if we don't, and then somebody else we do, you know, is that fair? I don't think so. I mean, it just doesn't, I don't think it's been a huge issue, and it just seems like an unnecessary added procedure to me.
All right.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's that festival. Pre-Apple
Right.
Festival, we spent a lot.
We put a lot of city labor into making sure that goes smooth and making sure the town looks good afterwards and before, you know, and if we are gonna do it a blanket for everybody, they're no different than anybody else, and then we take the Chamber of Commerce when they let hay blow all over the place and keep their $100 because we had a guy up there sweeping up hay. I would be mad if I was on the Chamber of Commerce and that, you know.
well, we should be mad at the Chamber of
I
Commerce
agree.
for leaving it in the
I
mess.
think they shouldn't have left. I'm not saying I don't think they
Well, I
should
know
have
that,
left that
but-
there. I'm just saying.
That, I mean, that hadn't happened a lot, but they did leave it in a mess.
Right.
And
I agree.
them and Blues Brothers was together on everything they done up there. I mean, there's no reason why they're making money off that we should have to come in and clean up their mess. You don't go to the neighbor's house and clean up their yard, you know.
And I'll go back to if the next time they had to come ask for a street closure, they were here in person, we could ask them about that and, you know, and make that a point that.
Well, we could stop a lot of the street closures. If they don't come here, then they don't get a street closure.
So my question to the council then is tonight, so we can wrap this up, do we want to take this any further and add the additional language and add the additional signatures for the consideration of the street closures before it comes to us? Or do we just want to forget it right now? It makes me no difference what we choose to do. I asked for this to be done because I thought it was necessary, and if it's not, I'm perfectly fine with it.
Well, I'd make a motion that we go through with the form. You put a lot of work in it, and it's not a big deal for somebody to fill this out, and they get their money back. It's just not a big deal, you know.
Okay, so you're making a motion to have the additional language
Yeah,
and the additional signatures on the form?
yes.
Okay,
And approve the form.
and then approve the form at the next meeting? Correct?
Are you fine with that, Richard?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion for that. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
No.
Motion carries. Thank you. The second part of new business is the Clearwave fiber presentation, and Mayor, I'm going to defer to you on this.
Yes, and sorry for any confusion I created. I think Led Sanders believed Clearwave would be here to give a presentation, unable to be. So the bottom line here is that Clearwave, while they remain operational under the name Clearwave, they have been purchased by a company out of Phoenix, Arizona, that is injecting a lot of capital into the company, and they are wanting to bring fiber, which I understand to be the fastest internet that you can have, to every doorstep in Murphysboro, and they're doing that in a number of other communities in southern Illinois that they serve. They say, and I have no reason not to believe them, that they can proceed with this work based upon their current agreements inside our right-of-ways. I know that one of their representatives met with Mr. Bills not too long ago, and so I will give them credit for talking to us up front about, hey, we're going to be doing a lot of directional boring. We want to make sure we don't run into, existing infrastructure. We want to collaborate and work with you. They say they're going to be bringing in dozens, if not over 100 contractors to get the work done. And so, they'll be in town, eating at the restaurants and staying at the hotel, et cetera. So anyway, Brian Manwaring, I wanted you to address this. I know you'd sent me an email earlier to express any thoughts you might have.
First of all, I think it's a good thing anytime citizens have more opportunities to, get services. So, I think this is a great thing for the citizens of Murphysboro. Whenever Clearwave initially installed their fiber network in Murphysboro, they were approached about possibly providing dark fiber access, which would basically be allowing the city to connect our network through their fiber network. And they stated at that time that they were not interested in providing that service, but they would be more than happy to sell us that service. When Extenet, which is another company that provides fiber networks primarily to cell phone companies, came to town, they were either willing to pay a fee for access to our right-of-way or willing to give us dark fiber across their network, which was how we were able to connect all the city buildings, bring the wastewater treatment plant online, and do a lot of things with that at very minimal cost to the city. Whenever I saw this proposal that they were going to be expanding the service, my suggestion to the mayor was it might be good to approach Clearwave again about, hey, other companies that have done this have offered this service. Is that something you would be willing to do and provide us access to that at no charge? Should we get access to that? Clearwave has a much more extensive network in town, so things like cameras traffic cameras at the entrances to town or along Walnut Street, connecting our sewer lift stations or our warning sirens to our network would be much easier having access to a much bigger network. So it was just my suggestion that, as we have conversations with them, we throw that idea out there. They may say, no, we're going to operate under our existing agreement. We don't have to give you anything, and they're probably correct. new leadership may have a different take on it. They may say, yeah, we'll give you that access. So I just wanted to bring that forward and offer that suggestion in our future discussions with them.
Well, and Brian offered that today, and so they seem to be very willing to accommodate our questions and concerns. So I'm going to ask them to provide what Brian's asking for and see what their response is. So that's really all I have to say about it, but they asked me to, after meeting with me, to share the information. So happy to try to answer any questions anybody might have. All right. Mr. Urbis?
Are they the ones that are currently going on Old 13, on New 13?
Yes.
So I figured.
They've been all over town the last couple of weeks.
And they have a pretty extensive customer base with the businesses here in town.
All right, that's all I have to offer on that.
All right, Mayor, let me, if I could, jump back for 1 second for a conversation you and I had, and that is I want the council to think about if we do vote this form to go into place, setting a date in the future to start that. That way we could allow a lot of time to get the information out to the people to where they can have a clear understanding instead of just starting it today and then mixing people up along the way. So,
Yeah, I think a future effective date, I don't know when, but down the line would be good.
What about the ones we've already approved for, like, through September or October or whatever?
they're already good.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you would, just consider that and think how far out we need to go. Yep. And that's all I have. Are there any public comments? If not, Mayor, we can move out of community relations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Austin. That takes us to public improvement. Question, he obviously is absent this evening. Under public improvement, we have no old business and no new business. Do we have any public comment regarding public improvement? Hearing none, we'll move out of that and go to Public Works, chaired by Mr. Gary McCollum. Gary?
Thank you, Mayor. We have old business consideration of a proposal for revision to the ordinance on meter tampering and other water service. Have we got everything lined up on that?
Well, you should have a copy of what we have put together. I think everybody knows I've worked with Catherine and Tim in addressing some of their concerns. I can kind of go through this item by item and give you a brief summary of what it is, if you'd like. If you have read it, maybe you'll understand just what we've addressed. And this would just be provisions that would be added to the existing section 38.2.1, which has basic regulations regarding utility service, which would apply to both water and sewer. And it addresses the matters regarding what we have already, specific provisions regarding tampering with the city system, disconnections, and those matters. And a lot of what we're doing here clarifies what has already been addressed with a little more detail. The first one, M, it just makes clear it's city personnel who's authorized to turn off or turn on utility service unless it is a licensed plumber who's first contacted the water department and gotten authority to do so. There have been instances where people have gone out and in one particular instance, I think that we previously discussed where it was a landlord going and turning on, he was outside the city limits, but he was still turning water on and off, trying to evict a tenant. He was turning off water for people other premises, not the one he was trying to evict, but other ones. So, this is just a little clarification that people who try to do that on their own are not authorized to city personnel, or if it's a licensed plumber, they first contact the water department and get permission from the water department. We've addressed it under N, another matter that Catherine has had to deal with a lot. It's where the situation where landlords are trying to evict tenants on their own, where they've told her, I'm trying to evict this tenant, I want her water turned off. That's a situation that is addressed by Illinois statute, whereby it prohibits the landlord from doing so. We've just added language that if the city knows that that is what a landlord is intending to do, which oftentimes you find out the landlord says, I want to evict this tenant, will you shut the water off? We just provided that the city is not going to knowingly assist that landlord in violating state law. Under O, this deals with the situation where we have a customer. We limit our language there to the customer. We have different provisions that we may have a cost being charged to not only the customer, but also the owner. So we've limited this to the situation where it is a customer whose water has been turned off. The city has put a lock on the meter, then that customer goes in and takes their own action to turn their water back on, either by breaking the meter or tampering with it otherwise to run a line from the city service, bypassing the meter to turn their own service back on. Which Tim tells me some people have taken some pretty elaborate measures to do so. It provides a procedure by which that customer will be billed automatically for the cost of either breaking a lock, damaging the meter, what is involved. We have limits, we put limits on when that will apply. As I say, it is the customer that will apply to, not an owner, where it may be a tenant doing it. We put a process in there by which, before doing so, Tim will go, or whoever he would designate within the water department to do so, to go in and speak with the customer, to do an investigation as to what was done and make his report. We put in a process by which that customer, if that customer doesn't believe they were rightfully charged that amount, there's an appeal process in place. They would be required to make a written appeal within the time frame when their next water bill would be due. That appeal would then be heard by the Public Works Committee, which, as we have our committee set up now, that would be the full city council. It would be a procedure similar to what was recently done, where our animal control officer asked to have a dog declared to be, or the animal control officer did determine an animal to be a vicious animal, and that person then came to the council to present their situation, why they didn't believe that animal was a vicious animal. So there is a procedure in effect for the customer who doesn't believe they were rightfully charged to address the matter here. That procedure would not, there's other situations where as I say, where an owner's meter or system may be tampered with, where the owner has no knowledge that this has been done, no involvement. As Tim explains to me, there are some extreme cases where a person may go into a house that is unoccupied at the time, set up occupancy on their own, and then turn water on by themselves. That would be in a situation where the owner may have no knowledge that this is occurring. So this procedure of automatically billing the charges for damage that are done would not apply to an owner in a circumstance such as that, where the owner would have had no knowledge, no involvement, which those are circumstances under which Tim would know that by his speaking with the owner, the customer, and doing his investigation under the procedure that we have. So in our discussions, we really think it would be a very limited circumstance under which somebody would appeal after Tim would go through his process of speaking with the customer, the owner, and doing his investigation. But of course, there could be some circumstances where those would come before the council to address that. So we have that language in there. If you've read it, or if you have questions about our particular procedures that we put in, I can address those with you. The last item we put in under R would be the circumstance where somebody is charged with damaging a meter, damaging city equipment, tampering in some way to put water back on, and they are charged either under the city code for that violation, or if they're charged under state statute for doing so. we put in a requirement that in that proceeding, that in addition to any fines, that they would also be responsible to pay restitution to the city for any damages that would be done. And of course, we provide if the person has otherwise been billed for those charges and paid those charges, they will not then, again, be asked to pay restitution. We already do have language in the city code by which if somebody does damage a meter or damage the city's equipment, that the person will be billed for those services. So we're really not, in setting up a process by which we're billing for those charges, it's not, that in itself isn't something new. The new procedure we're setting up in billing the customer is that circumstance where water's been disconnected and then action is being taken to turn that water service back on. By breaking a lock, damaging the meter, or bypassing the meter, something to that effect. And we, as I said, we set up that procedure so it can be addressed. So if it turns out that, hey, this person did not have anything to do with it, if Tim through his investigation and speaking with everybody involved makes that determination, that billing would not be made. So, if you've read through it and have any questions or anything I've said, I will address them.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great job, it's really, really detailed, and my only thought was when you last mentioned the person who just, it doesn't have the lease, just homestead or whatever, they're not really a customer, they're never,
Correct.
Yes. Would this apply to them? They're not really a customer, they've gone in and improperly,
Right, under that would be somebody who would be charged under the city code.
Okay.
If they're within the city limits, outside of the city limits, they're gonna be charged under state statute for meter tampering.
Okay.
So, we deal with those already, but we would not then tack on the owner a fee on his bill for the situation where the homeowner was not
So
involved.
this doesn't really apply to that situation?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Didn't seem like it did, so, thank you.
Under Q, in listening to your presentation, Richard, I assume the Public Works Committee is the city council.
It is, we basically, we still have our committees, but by our city code, whereas there were just certain members of the city council on each committee, we've set up our city code by which all council members are now on that committee.
Okay.
So it would be the entire city council.
Just wanted to be sure.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to adopt this?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nay? Ayes have it. The other, old business, the consideration of all on chip program for 2022.
All right, I don't remember where we left this off at our last meeting, to be quite honest. I know we discussed doing the southwest quadrant, and then if there were any alleys that just really were obviously in good repair, perhaps we could, pass over those and go to a different quadrant with the extra money.
I think we was talking about $60,000 appropriate, wasn't it, Harold?
That's typically what you spend. And Aaron can probably speak on it, we did look at it, took out the streets that he didn't feel needed to be, any have any attention to, and we did move to a different quadrant, so we're still kind of working on that to get us to that number.
He gave me a roundabout, it's about $50,000 to the southwest. I know it's been brought to my attention several times about Watson Road. Honestly, I think we should probably use whatever we have left there just to repair whatever we could. I talked to the mayor about it in time too. There's really nothing that my department can do to that to fix it. I mean, it either needs to be dug out, have a new basement underneath it and overlaid, or.
Does that still get bus traffic?
I don't complain about the trees anymore, let me tell you.
I drop my kids off at Watson Road daycare 5 days a week, and I don't see any buses on it. And I'm there at the time that there ought to be some coming through, but that road is, it's got a lot of problems, say the least.
I'm okay with
It's bad.
it.
Okay. Not gonna get any complaints with me.
Yeah.
What are we trying to do with that road? I mean, obviously, you know, you can look at it, it needs new base. I don't know if that's something you want a contractor, this, you know, you get an oil and chip contractor, all of a sudden doing something like that, maybe a different circumstance.
Well, Darren, I mean, is it in your opinion that if we did a really tidy, you know, pothole patching job in advance of oil and chipping, that would improve the road such that you wouldn't have to do so much potholing?
I'm pretty sure that we included Watson Road on the oil chip we did last year where we went throughout town.
Okay.
And if any of you traveled it now, you see what it looks like.
Just as bad as it was before we did it.
Right,
Mhm.
okay. Well,
You know, the oil and chip, if you got a hole in your oil and chip, you got a hole when you're done.
You got an oil and chip hole. Yeah.
So you're gonna have to.
Might be something you put an extra coat on or something, you know, maybe something to look at.
And Darren, it's what, gonna take you, on the oil chip program, probably 6-7 weeks to get it
6
ready?
7 weeks, yeah, to get it ready.
well, is there anything else we need to actually take formal action on here at the council level on this? Looking around, I'm not seeing anybody telling me yes.
There will be an appropriation, but that's,
All right.
once you settle on something.
Darren, do you have any questions?
Nope, after having driven around the southwest part of town, it was definitely needed for the most
Okay.
part. Like I said, I did take some of it out, but I would like to do something with Watson Road, whether, you know, if it's a little bit of it or whatever we can do.
Well, do you need to just do more investigation of that yourself, or?
It's all gonna be about how much money we had to spend. how much-
Okay. Well, so you need to finish the southwest quadrant and then figure out,
It's done. And there, we have a map of what needs to be done there, and that was the $50,000 mark, is about what Bill had.
so basically we got 10 grand we can spend on Watson Road. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess my only point is, you know, I'd like to see Watsonville fixed, but I just don't wanna throw $10,000 that's gonna get washed away in the month either, you know, so I'd be in favor of trying to figure out what we would need to spend to make it drivable.
Yeah, we can look at it, make an estimate on that. I mean, if we think he can patch it and then oil and chip it, we'll do the job, that's fine.
Well, I mean, to truly fix it is gonna be a
Right.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to throw
$700,000
Yeah.
project.
Right.
So it would
Street
be a
is-
construction project.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
either that or just put a close sign on either end of it. I mean, that's about the only two things you're gonna be able to do to fix it
Oh, my
permanently.
goodness.
Bridge out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion to adopt
Indefinitely.
it?
I don't think we have the list yet. We don't have the actual exact dollar amount list yet, right?
We can have that at the next meeting.
Next
Okay.
meeting?
Can we get a map, or,
Yeah,
Karen, can we get
there'll
the,
be a map with the.
okay, thank you.
Well, that's all of old business. Is there any public comment on Public Works? Hearing none, we'll move out, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. McComb. Just one note, we did get a updated map from Historic Preservation. I suppose that's information. We'll go to Public Safety, chaired by Mr. Russell Brown. In his absence, I'll handle these items. We have no old business. Under new business, we have discussion regarding condition of the property at 1510 Walnut Street. This is the building commonly known as the Rowden Building. We've all seen the plywood structure that Darren and his crew put up to try to protect pedestrians from potentially bricks falling out of the front of it. I do not see Mr. Isert here this evening. And I'll let Gary McComb talk to this because we're talking beforehand. Apparently, there is some sort of odd situation with the parcels and who owns what there. Gary, can you talk to this a little bit?
Yeah. He owns the lot under the building, but he don't own the building. I've never heard of it, but he owns the ground under where the bricks falling off. But the county has got the taxes on the building. I think he's bought from RJ's down to the service station, Gary Rowden.
He has.
But he has worked out where he bought the lot and not the building on it. And it's, to me, it's tremendously dangerous I mean, Darren, those guys done what they can to keep people from walking under that brick that's falling. But if that goes, I think that whole line might go down through there. I don't know if we should be taking the brick off of it, if we should be getting a hold of the county to do something with it.
Mr. Blake?
Yeah, I looked into that property. It's there's one lot involved. It's not, from what I've seen, is that it's not that the county owns it, is that he's not paid the taxes on one of the lots. The county has now filed a petition for issuance of tax deed, which it does annually. That property has been sold for taxes before, and I believe it was the individual who bought them, found out what it was, had to declare to sell in error. So now the Jackson County trustee has stepped in, and they're to the point they filed a petition, as they have for several properties throughout the county. They do an annual petition for tax deeds. But as of now, the redemption does not expire until August 25th of this year. He still owns the property. The county, in the past, from what we've seen, we saw this with the old shoe factory building, the county will not go into title of that property. If somebody, when they had their annual sale, somebody bought it, knowing what it is, then they would take a deed and then pass it on to that person. But the county's not going to go into title for that one lot, knowing the condition of that property and knowing how it needs to be addressed. And my looking at the assessor's map is that if we look at that, just looking at RJ's build, what was RJ's building, now owned by Gary Rowden, and then the other building, which are, of course, are adjoining buildings, there are four lots that are each 22 feet wide. The building we're talking about, we're only talking about one lot that the county has now petitioned for a tax deed for, but that building is actually on two of them. So unless I see something different, if we look closer at the title ownership, then Mr. Rowden is still the owner of the building, and he's the party to look to do necessary repairs or whatever needs to be done to make that building safe.
Richard, from your perspective, what can the city do to force Mr. Rowden to repair his building?
It would be the same process that we went through with Ms. Holman as to the shoe factory. I don't know if Charlie has yet sent out the 15-day demand to make safe or demolish, either demolish or make safe or not. I don't know if he's done that yet. It would be giving the 15-day notice to Mr. Rowden and other interested parties. If action is not taken within that time frame, if it's filing an action with the court, I'm sure the city doesn't want to pay the cost to tear the building down. It would just be the cost to compel him, or the action as we did there. We didn't ask to take action as Ms. Holman to make a similar situation. We asked for an order to compel her to do it. It would be here to compel him to do what's needed to make that building, to put it in a safe condition.
Can we assess so much of a fine, $500 a day, until such time that it's made in a safe condition because of the loss of access of our pedestrians to the sidewalk?
I don't know if we could do that. I would have to look at, as far as the ability to, I guess we could charge him the offense of maintaining a nuisance.
I assume that there's probably city infrastructure underneath that sidewalk that he's impairing our ability to get to in case we need to.
I think he could be issued a citation for, I would look at the proper statute,
Okay.
or city ordinance, but we would have I think he would probably need to be given notice to abate a nuisance. I believe that would be a nuisance under our city code.
Richard, does a structural engineer need to look at that building and condemn it? If
Just
it's
knowing that I don't think we would have to go as far as having a structural engineer at this point, because I think at this point we're seeing that awning structure is falling down. The city's having to prop it up.
Well, it looked like when they built that, they put wood across there instead of a steel rail across. Isn't that what they did there, and that wood under the bottom of it,
Across the very bottom of it?
where the brick was set on it? You know, most people, when they do that,
There is brick there, so.
they put a steel there and embed it in the wall, and that wall sets on the steel. Looks like to me that and underneath is wood. I didn't get out close to it and look, because it's subject to fall in at any time.
Well, I don't know whether he was able to investigate it properly enough to say for sure or not, Gary, but this was initially brought to my attention by John Medvedev, who said that there was structural steel under it or adjacent to it or something. So, I don't know. Just to answer your question.
Well, Charlie's one told me that Rowden owned the lot and didn't own the building. That he-
And I'm gonna guess that that may be, maybe if Mr. Rowden told him that maybe just a misunderstanding of how the tax deed process works. A
That
lot of
could
people
be.
think once their property, somebody buys it at tax sale, they no longer own it, but that's not the case. There's a procedure to go to, but there's time involved in not then paying subsequent taxes, and then whoever the tax buyer is. Here's the Jackson County trustee, steps they have to go through, notices, the court process, and then getting an actual tax deed.
And then once
Up to
they
that
get the
point,
deed,
he still owns it.
That's when it goes out for auction, right? When they do their, once they have the deed after that, correct?
It wouldn't cost that much to probably take that brick by itself down across there. But I don't know what that'll do to the top where the brick's at. If you got no bottom, that top's gonna be hard to stay
Well,
up
and,
to.
yes, if there's much more involved than just, you know, there may be, the city may have to get, if they're getting into the situation of a court action compelling Mr. Rowden to do what would need to be done with the building, then there may need to be experts brought in and involved to determine just what that's going to be.
Well, the roof's been falling in the back for many
Yeah,
years.
I've noticed that too.
Richard, I would like you to call Charlie Isert tomorrow and get with him on what evidence that he's compiled and just take the appropriate action, because we obviously want to try to fix that situation, and I think the only way to do it is to get his attention through the proper process. And maybe perhaps Mr. Mills too, Darren, I don't know what costs you had in the, you know, construction of that box, time, materials, whatever, but we may need that input too.
I think Charlie has all that information.
Okay, very good.
Do we need to put a caution tape from the corner of that building all the way up to where we got it blocked to keep somebody from walking up to it and then walking around? Because if that's, don't you think, Darren, if where you guys put up the block, it, you think if that falls down the other end, it's gonna probably come too?
I'm sure it probably will.
I don't know if it's barricaded across the sidewalk. Well, right now, we got it where they can walk the sidewalk up to where we put the plywood up, and they go out in the street and around. But down on that west end, if somebody walks up to that, if that other part caves in, I'm not sure that wall ain't gonna come down too, just the brick. But I'd say if that falls, it's gonna go all the way out in the street, probably, the brick.
Well, do we want to just construct a, I mean, at some point, we limit Mr. Rowden's access completely to his building. I guess not completely, he can enter through the side.
Well, he's using the back building. We wouldn't be doing anything that. We'd be at the corner of his lot where he parks these lawnmowers, going back to where we build our structure up over the sidewalk.
Well, it would seem like we want to just construct another similar thing rather than have half of it be a wood box and then the other half be caution tape, because I know what happens, the first thunderstorm comes through, the caution tape will be, you know, in Walnut Street or.
You may know tomorrow night.
Right, well, the wooden box may be out there too if it gets enough with it, but, I don't know, Gary, I don't know what it cost us to construct the first one.
Well-
Just the material you see there was about $1,300, just with the price of material.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
something. Well, Gary, I mean, I
just, my part of it is just trying to keep a pedestrian or an older person going down through there, and you know, they don't look up. If we keep them from going that length of that building, keep anybody from walking from the length of that building to the other building there on Walnut. If that thing's like that in Apple Festival, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, good point.
Can we
Mr.
put up-
Davis?
Can we put up some kind of wooden fencing, kind of?
We have that orange snow fencing, which is basically a caution fencing that we put up there as well.
That'd be better than just.
Place that up temporarily, and we'll consider maybe doing something else as we go forward.
I don't mean to cause work for you, Darren, I just think it's a safety issue up there. I know you don't have anything to do.
All right, any public comment on the new business discussed? All right, that takes us to the Personnel Committee, chaired by Ms. Barbara Hughes. Barb's obviously absent this evening. We have no old business, we have no new, Mr. McComb.
Well, I'd like to ask a question. I don't understand the deal with Denise up there. Her getting hired under scale. They decide how much back pay she's supposed to get. We don't give her a back pay, which she worked for, and then we hire an attorney to take some of the money away from her. Who made that decision and why? I mean, that's one of our employees, and I know it seemed like the girls up there get the crappy end of a lot of the deals. And I just don't understand why we would hire a lawyer to fight a grievance when we owe our employee that money.
I think you need to talk to the union rep. I mean, if I get a grievance, I have our labor attorney advise me, and then I take that advice, and then the union representation says, here's what we'll settle it for. And so I say, okay.
Well, my understanding
It's
of...
not my job to represent the union.
Well, it's not mine either, but it's our employee that's worked for that money. Would we do that to the chief of police or the fire chief or somebody?
They're not union employee.
Who made them, who decided to pay her on the scale to start with? That's another...
Nobody made that decision. The contract, as it read, the language in the contract, frankly, what was adopted in the letter of the contract was not the spirit of the negotiation. And so Sandra interpreted the scale in a way that I think was an honest interpretation. I think once the union came with their analysis and our attorney looked at their analysis and said, yeah, I think, maybe we've made a mistake here. But their grievance wasn't filed in a timely fashion. And so there was a discussion about, all right, well, what's going to be satisfactory to the union member? And on behalf of the union member, the union said, X amount of dollars will satisfy them. And so I agreed to what the union said would satisfy them.
Well, are we paying her scale now?
Yes,
You sure of that?
I'm 100% sure of it.
Well, my understanding is she's not got the right scale. Do you know that she's making the money she's supposed to be making now?
I'm not sure.
No. Do you, Sandra?
I believe she is. That's to my knowledge, she is.
I was told she wasn't. I'm just bringing it up because I hate to see us, because I kind of take up for the girls anyway, but why we would, if we owe somebody the back pay that they worked and earned, why didn't we just pay her the money that we owed her and go on? I think that could have been brought in front of the council and just discussed it with everybody and made a vote. And I'm sure this council would have voted to pay her the money she had coming. I think they would. I mean, I don't know that now, but I would have liked to have the chance to discuss it. And you try to keep good employees. Of course, what we start employees at's terrible anyway. You advertise a job at $13 an hour, they can go to Walmart and they can go to McDonald's and make more money in that. And I know that's only 90 days on the guys, but on the girls it's a lot longer than that. I just don't think that we're giving some of our employees a fair shake. I mean, that's my opinion.
Well, the union has withdrawn their grievance, and the issue's been settled, and we have agreed that we're going to start, the negotiations with the clerical union in an expedient fashion, probably sooner than we would have normally, because I think everybody on the council has agreed that we want to try to do something to address the wages in that department. And so I look forward to doing that. I look forward to working with them on that. And really, Barb was out of town. She usually is the point person that takes on these things. And this was, brought to me, and I started to engage their union rep is because some of these things can't be brought to the council because the union says you got to deal with this within 5 days, or you basically cede the field. And so that's one of the reasons why these things get kicked up before I can bring them to the council, because it's just a time message.
Yeah, and it was already settled before I ever knew anything about it. I just felt like that we done her shitty, in other words. We should have paid her the back pay she had coming and went on about it, made everything right. But I don't think we should be starting anybody in the city temporary or what, less than $15 an hour. Because they can go to McDonald's, get $12, $13, $14 an hour, and they go to Walmart and make more money than that. And we're wanting to get good people to advertise for a job.
But I've yet to see anybody leave the city and go to work at McDonald's. So, I mean, I don't want to hear this
I'm not saying
about how we're
that,
underpaid people and we're not giving anybody any compensation.
I'm saying
It's all shit.
we're advertising people.
These contracts in line, we have worked to treat people fairly. I don't appreciate these issues being brought out, frankly, in open session. I'm happy to talk about them because I'm transparent and I always try to be. But we're going to make these things right. We're going to get people paid, Gary. And I'm not trying to treat anybody shitty. I'm trying to get people where they need to be and treat them fairly. And I think if you ask every one of these employees in here, not a single one of them has ever thought that me or this council is treating them unfairly. We treat these employees fairly.
Well, I think we did her. That's my opinion, and I'll stick to it. I think she should have got the money that she earned.
Mr. Mayor, can we move on? This isn't on the agenda. We've delved into things that should be handled in executive session. And
I don't agree with that either.
well,
All right, well, it's all, the one thing that Ron Williams told me was that you may not always agree with Gary, but you won't have to wonder what's on his mind. And that's, held true, and I appreciate it in a lot of ways. So I agree with Don, let's move on. I think that was under new business. Do we have any? Hearing none, we'll move on into the mayor's report. We have the consideration of an ordinance retaining the number of 10 aldermen. This comes to us, I believe, because we have fallen under a certain population threshold, which the state statute then says we ought to reduce the number of aldermen that we have. And I believe that, Richard, can you remind me what that population?
The population would
15,000.
be if the city, if a city with more than 3,000 but not exceeding 15,000 is to have 8 aldermen. When there is the new census is prepared, it shows that that threshold is no longer met. The city had 10 aldermen set, I don't know how far back. The reason this did not have to be addressed under prior censuses that have been taken when the city has been less than a population of 15,000 is there was an amendment to the particular state statute that says when when a city falls under that threshold, then redistricting is required. So if no action is taken by the city, since our most recent the census shows that we're under 15,000, then the city would be required to reduce the aldermen to 8 and redistrict to 4 wards instead of 5 wards with 10 aldermen. That same statute has a provision that says a city that is over, or the city that has previously established a set number of aldermen can keep that set number of aldermen by passing an ordinance saying we will keep that number of aldermen, which here is 10 with 5 wards.
All right.
So within another 10 years, when there's another census, if the city does want to maintain, if the city council does want to maintain 10 aldermen with 5 wards, it does take that action, you know, in another 10 years, unless our census really bumps up and we get above 15,000, that action will have to be taken again under the way the state statutes read right now. So the question would be, it doesn't necessarily have to be decided tonight. There's a period of 1 year from the time of the official census results are received by the city to take the action, and the certification by the Illinois Secretary of State, it was October 14th, 2021. So there's a 1 year period from that year for the city to take action to retain 10 aldermen. So if not, then the city would then need to go through the steps of procedurally to reduce to 8 aldermen and redistricted 4 wards. So the question would be for the city council to maintain 10 aldermen with 5 wards, or go through procedures to redistrict to 4 wards with 8 aldermen.
It would seem to me that we would want to maintain 10 aldermen, the wards are set. I'm sure we probably had 10 aldermen for 100 years. I have no idea when that was adopted exactly. But does anybody remember this council being anything other than 10 members?
I could not tell by looking through my ordinances we have, our code, or references to a copy of an older revised code from the 70s, and I don't know when the action would have been taken establishing.
Okay.
5 wards with 10 aldermen.
Well, is there a motion to adopt the ordinance?
I move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, up next, we have consideration of engagement with labor attorney Courtney Cox. For quite some time, Martin Brittingham has helped assist the city when considering various labor issues. He is going to be retiring and is setting aside a lot of these various things. Mr. Cox is a contemporary, a co-worker in some sorts of his, and I had Mr. Blake and our city attorney review that letter. Richard, do you have any comments on it? The engagement letter with Mr. Courtney Cox?
I did. The only comment I would have is that, he has his rate set forth in there. Everything was pretty standard. If everybody is agreeable with his rate. The one thing he does add in there is a service charge of 2.25%. That's tacked on, which that would just add, if you look at it, would add that amount to his rate. There's nothing else in that letter of engagement that would stand out to me.
All right. Have we used him for something previously?
He was used as an attorney in a discrimination suit some years ago on behalf of the insurance company.
I mean, I know Courtney, he's a good attorney. I was a little disappointed in some of his advice to that, but that happens. What's his rate?
His is 365, and his senior paralegal 160. And it doesn't list what the rate would be for any of his associates.
I know Mark's run it out for quite a while.
Well, I think we're the last city he's represented in terms of labor issues, and he had 5 or 6. So I've kind of begged him to stay as long as I can, and my funny stories and everything else just won't keep him any longer.
Well, when I retired, tell him how good it was.
Yeah.
He's ready to go.
All right, well. Is there a motion to approve the engagement letter of Mr. Cox?
I move.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, one other thing, I didn't really have any feedback for that, but I want to thank Tim and Catherine for their work along with Mr. Blake on the meter tampering ordinance. I know that that was tabled over the course of a couple of meetings because of their continued input, and I just appreciate their work on that as well. I failed to mention that earlier. So with that, I'll go to council member requests. I'll go to Ms. Curry-Witzman.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Austin.
Mayor, two things real quickly, and I don't know if I said this at the beginning of the community relations or not, but I want to thank Sandra for the work that she did getting the form out to us where we could have a conversation about it. And then also I wanted to thank the folks that called me this week regarding the form to offer some good points for that. So thank you.
Very good. Clerk Hunziker.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Pittman. Nothing. Mr. Purvis.
Not a big deal, but I like the setup we have. There's always, not so bad here, but in the high school cafeteria, it's like, where are they? I can't see it, so it's just like, not a big deal, but I think it's good to have you guys at the table, so to speak.
Definitely. Mr. McCall.
Yeah, I'd like to see this time of year a note put on the water bills or added to the water bills about blowing the grass and the leaves in the street.
It's that time of year, yeah.
We're already getting a few places that are doing it.
We'll be sure to do that. Sandra, please make a note of that so we don't forget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gladden.
Nothing.
All right, we'll go to department head requests. Mr. Blake.
Nothing to report.
Ms. Ridley.
Nothing.
Mr. Evans.
I don't have a request, but just an update. The auditors have been in the last few weeks and done all the field work, and we're just kind of wrapping up some report type issues with them, not issues, but just routine things. And so hopefully in the next several meetings, they'll be doing the report. I know you'll all be waiting on the edge of your seat for that.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
And thankfully, because of your hard work, it's usually a boring report.
I hope it will. It should be.
Yeah. Chief McBride.
Nothing, thank you.
Chief Ellemeyer.
No.
Ms. Volley.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Manwaring.
Just to make the council aware, some of you may have seen on social media, the contractor for Federal Signal is in town today and tomorrow doing the annual maintenance on the outdoor warning sirens. So timing with weather tomorrow is not necessarily the greatest. It's been scheduled for about 5 or 6 months, and there was no real good way to delay it and still get it done in time for storm season. So we're going to work late this evening and try to get done before the weather tomorrow. So.
At least they don't work the midnight shift.
Yeah.
Well, he had everybody in the school in an uproar.
Mr. Sheffer.
Have nothing, thank you.
And Mr. Sheffer, thank you for the engineering report.
Any questions on that? Or?
Mr. Lee.
Actually, yes. I wanted to make this an agenda item, but I kind of got the time to get on there. But co-equipment is where we bought our sewer backer from 31 years ago. 31 years old piece of equipment. He oftentimes checks on us and asks if we need any parts or pieces or just sales and stuff. And recently he told me that they had gotten in on trade 4 2016 sewer backers. For a price of around $160,000. Now a new one for backer 2100 when it's exactly comparable to what we have now will be about $475,000. So we get these things on trade, and this thing's 6 years old, or one of the 4 is. They go through them, they recondition them, and when they come out, they look as new as a 2016 would look. Some of the pros on that is, a newer machine's gonna be a safer machine. It's got a single engine, which is less maintenance, less easy, less fuel. It's lower to the ground, so you're gonna get under the tree limbs, and you're not gonna be, making a mess, or you're gonna get in tighter spots. It's automatic transmission. Some of the guys that Darren and I have hired recently are all looking to get a CDL. The CDLs have changed now, where you have to have a commercial license for a manual transmission or an automatic transmission. The sewer backer is the last piece of equipment that we have that will require CDL for a manual transmission. has air conditioning, so that's awesome. But it's a more dependable vehicle, and, you know, we take between 175 and 200 calls a year just for that sewer vac. And each time, that's usually us, you know, a customer could be, we could have sewage in the basement or chance of. So we use that for that reason. And like I said, 200 times a year, it's quite often. You know, it's average of what, I mean, on a working day, it's almost once a day, you know, not counting the weekends. So also you can do with this, you can hydro excavate, which means that you can actually dig a hole in the ground using water pressure, and the tube sucks the debris back up into the truck. So you could actually, if you're looking for a water line, a gas line, a sewer line, whatever you want, you could actually just use the front tube of that truck to actually dig an 8-foot hole looking for utility, which is also a great thing. Street department uses it quite often as well. I mean, it's a multi-use machine. Pat uses it 1 to 2 times a month to clean the grease. So I mean, well, I guess my point is that it's a very useful machine. It's very old. Sometimes it takes 3 guys to run it because there's a relay in the back. We replace it several times. It loses contact. The whole machine just quits. A lot of times you have a guy in the back kind of knocking on it or pulling it out and pushing it back in just to run the machines. And I'm afraid one day that's not going to be enough.
Yeah.
And when that one day comes, it's going to be a day when you've got a backup sewer man, you've got several people, you know, inconvenienced by a backup. So I guess I just wanted to put that out for you, just for you to think about. You know, $160,000 is a lot cheaper than $475. I'm sure it comes with a warranty. I can find out, you know, if we're even in the market for that at this time. But you know, these types of deals don't come by very often. And you know, again, our truck's 31 years old. It was bought used as a demo. It was a 90. We got it in 91. Other than that, I just want to open it up and anybody want to have a little conversation about it.
WJ?
I know we can't vote on it because it's not on the agenda, but Tim and I have talked about this several times. I think you told me at least 20 days a month you're using it, you know.
Right.
Will, you and I said that we had about $10,000 of SMISER money that was specifically given for that we never used.
Right.
It was supposed to be towards the vacuum truck, and then they've offered us, what, $12,000 for trade?
Yeah.
And I think, Tim, you and I originally talked about not knowing what they'd give us for trade on that, about whether we'd be able to give that or something to a smaller municipality or something like that. I think it's worth seeing if one of those municipalities would be willing to buy it for $12,000. You know, maybe they're interested in that. I don't know if that's the case or not, but if it's something we use that often, and you're getting that good a deal on it, I know it's hard. I know it's not budgeted and it's not, but it's, you know, it's worth every cent that we'll get it for. That's for sure.
Well, it's one of those things where when this Vector actually does cease operating or we come to a repair that we say, well, this repair is worth more than this vehicle. It's not like we're not going to be able to function without a Vector truck. It's almost, you know, as critical as one of the clarifiers at the sewer plant in some ways. And I've heard for years about, you know, it's a $500,000 expenditure. And again, I don't know where we come up with the money for the thing, but of course everybody looks at Scott. He's supposed to find a check.
Or Scott.
Well,
But
certainly I don't think we could do that without a rate increase.
rates on everybody's or just your bill?
But I'll take that. I'll take it in the short term.
Is that taken into account financing option of it, or is that if we bought it outright?
You know, if you finance it for 5 years at say 4%, it'd be about $3,000 a month. Now, again, we could probably charge some of that to general fund, some mechanisms, you know, lease it to the street department from time to time as needed, or allocate the cost. So maybe the cost of water sewer wouldn't be the full 160 in the end.
Yeah.
But certainly, you know, that with, you know, all the other projects that we have going on, you know, I think it would call for that, some level of rate increase.
Well, I think we should put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and I think we ought to give it healthy consideration because it's a deal, and we haven't seen one of those for quite a while on that piece of equipment.
So you still got 4 of them down?
I'll have to reach out to him tomorrow. I mean, hopefully he doesn't just have one. We'd have to move pretty quick, but
Yeah.
I'll find out tomorrow, and I can let you guys know where to
All right. Any questions on that? All right, we'll go to Mr. Gladson. Mr. Bills? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
If you guys purchase Stonies from me, I have them in my car. I can see it. Thank you.
That's why the case. I need to go now, but else it's like, see you, I need to talk to them.
Well,
We got the, they got the water,
when you looked at the label,
washing machine and stuff working on the ice box.
Free time.
Okay. That was the.